Hello and welcome. Let's take a look at our top story. Once solid bilateral partners, South Africa and the United States today share a complicated relationship. Geopolitical developments, including the war in the heart of Europe and the one in West Asia, have further added complexities to the ties between the two countries. South Africa's Foreign Minister, Ronald Lamola, recently concluded a visit to the United States that was aimed at strengthening bilateral relations and cooperation. However, Ramaphosa's minister also asked the United States to not preach. He said that Washington should not tell his country what to do. He added that South Africa seeks continued frank engagements with the US on geopolitical matters based on mutual respect. But why did Ramaphosa's minister send this message to Washington? Now, this was possibly because Israeli diplomats were reportedly lobbying US lawmakers to pressure South Africa to drop its genocide case against Israel at the ICJ. Pretoria dragged Israel to the International Court for its indiscriminate bombardment of Gaza, which has resulted in over 41,000 deaths so far. In Washington, Ronald Lamola met the key stakeholders, including the House of Representatives Subcommittee on Africa, the Congressional Black Caucus, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and bipartisan think tanks. Addressing one of the conferences in Washington, he said South Africa won't tell the U.S. what to do, and it expects the U.S. not to tell Pretoria what to do. Not just South Africa. Earlier this week, even Tanzania rebuked the U.S. for alleged interference. The Tanzanian president, Samia Suluhu Hassan, had slammed the U.S. and its Western allies for criticizing the country's handling of internal affairs. Mutual disappointment and mistrust have troubled relations between South Africa and the U.S. in recent years. America has questioned South Africa's supposed inconsistent sense of moral outrage. This is because while it has taken Israel to the ICJ over its Gaza offensive, Pretoria has claimed to maintain a neutral stance on Russia's war in Ukraine. It has refused to join the West's alliance against Russia and has abstained on every Ukraine-related resolution adopted by the UN General Assembly. The ties nosedived further in May of 2023 when US Ambassador accused South Africa of supplying weapons to Russia amid a raging war in Ukraine. South Africa has also been pushing for a shift to a multipolar world with a stronger global south, where developing countries would have more influence. Hence, it views China and Russia, its BRIC partners, as friends rather than enemies. South Africa has also been hosting navies of Russia and China to perform drills in its waters. South Africa's ruling party, the African National Congress, has historical ties to Moscow. During Cold War, the Soviet Union supported its anti-apartheid struggle, while Washington designated the ANC as a terrorist organization. And as far as ties with China go, they are crucial for South Africa's economy. Now, South Africa trades more with China than with any other country in the world. In recent years, the junta-led states in Africa were the first to reject the US and the West, and instead turn to Russia. Now, South Africa and Tanzania, two strong democracies in the continent, have asked Washington to not preach. Is the United States losing the race of influence in Africa to Russia and China? For more on this, we have with us Ayanda Sishiwigzal, a political commentator and journalist joining us live from Johannesburg, South Africa. Great to speak to you, Ayanda.
Thank you, and good afternoon to all of the Firstpost listeners and viewers.
Ayanda, what are the historical and geopolitical contexts behind Minister Lamola's statement regarding the US?
You were right to point out in your introduction that South Africa and Palestine do have a lot in common, and also there are geopolitical ties that South Africa has to the United States. But more so, the relationship that we have with Palestine is that of historical ties that we share with one another. Of course, we know that our first state president, our founding president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, he made the statement of saying, if Palestine is not free, then we are not free, and therefore the state and of South Africa is tied to what the state of Palestine looks like. And right now, Palestine has no statehood. They are currently being bombed and attacked, and what we are seeing is a state of laws that look and are envisioned much like apartheid. So they are lacking statehood. Their lands are being occupied by another state that is not of their own, and they are being subjugated, much like the history of South Africa. And so we have had very strong ties to what is happening in Palestine, particularly because of the history that we have under apartheid. And so that is why South Africans are really resonating hard with what is happening in Gaza right now. And that's the reason why geopolitically we have always maintained strong relations with the people of Palestine, in particular the resistance fighters and the resistance political parties that are operating within Gaza as well, particularly with Yasser Arafat, former leader of Gaza, has had strong relations with Nelson Mandela, former president of South Africa. So we have had very strong ties with the people of Gaza, especially with the people of Palestine, which is why it is that we are right now in the world when it comes to fighting against the genocide that is currently happening there right now.
And how might this statement impact South Africa's diplomatic relations with the United States and other Western countries? Could there be potential diplomatic repercussions and shifts in international relations away from traditional Western allies towards Russia and China?
We are seeing that happen already. We're seeing that happen already. There are African countries that have wholly rejected the West. We are seeing a lot more people moving away from trading in the US dollar to trading in the UN and trading in the yuan, and trading also in their local currencies. We are seeing countries such as Uganda being moved off of AGOA because of their legal and the political stances when it comes to certain human rights atrocities. And so we also, when AGOA, the African Growth Opportunity Act, was in jeopardy for us, because, again, of our stance when it comes to Palestine and also our non-aligned stance in Russia, we had to send last year a high delegation to go to the United States in order to speak, and that was the former Minister of Trade and Industry, Minister Ibrahim Patel, went to the United States along with a high delegation in order to convince them for us to stay within the AGOA trade agreement. And so we are starting to slowly see the repercussions. You also mentioned in your introductions with Ruben Bridgety, who is the ambassador here to from the United States, and the demarches that he received because of the allegations of us selling weapons. So we are already starting to see the pushback diplomatically from what is happening. We are also now seeing the pushback from Western countries, but also we are seeing a lot of global South countries starting to stand up for themselves and saying that we are no longer going to be dictated to by the West and by powerful nations, particularly in the United Nations. We are seeing more of a call for reform in the Security Council to make sure that African countries actually have a permanent seat on the Security Council, because we know that the Security Council is the most powerful decision-making body in the United Nations. And right now, as it stands, the United Nations General Assembly can't really do anything and move without the Security Council. So global South countries are really starting to do something about the position that they're in and making sure that you're not dictated to and spoken down to by Western nations. And I think that it's about damn time.
And what are the possible domestic political motivations behind Minister Lamola's remarks?
And domestically, as I said before, South Africans really resonate with what is happening and the struggles that the people of Palestine are going through currently right now, because historically, those have been our struggles as people of South Africa. And so a lot of people, especially in the month of May, when we were voting in the elections, they really were thinking about their votes and adding the issues of Gaza into the reasons why it is that they are or they are not going to vote for certain political parties. And so we saw that foreign policies of certain political parties were front and center for the first time in a really long time, people were questioning, what is your stance when it comes to Palestine and the people of Gaza? And we see that there have been different political organizations, such as, the African National Congress, which has strong ties to political organizations in Palestine, but also more so we have economic freedom fighters who also came out in support of Gaza. But also you have political parties such as the Democratic Alliance who have not fully come out in support of Gaza, and that has really actually damaged their stance on their voting numbers, because people really do then question what is your stance when it comes to human rights as well. But we also need to question South Africa's non-aligned stance, right, when it comes to Russia, because people do tend to say that there is a double standard, and that yes, it is, we are morally obligated to make sure that we stand up for the people of Palestine when it comes to the international laws that have been, that are in peril right now as it stands. But we also need to understand that Russia went and invaded another nation, and that too in and of itself is a direct convention of the international laws, and that needs to be called out itself. So how is it that we can call out Israel, but at the same time we keep quiet when it comes to our friends? And so there is a double standard and a level of hypocrisy that is involved in this. But make no mistake, the whataboutism does not feature in this when it comes to the 40,000 people that are dying in Gaza and the actual televised genocide that we are seeing. And it is a genocide according to the International Court of Justice. So it's not just me who's saying this, but this is according to international law and according to the Geneva Convention of 1961 that says that you're not allowed to bomb civilian homes, you're not allowed to bomb hospitals, and you're not allowed to bomb schools. And this is what is currently happening in Gaza right now as we speak.
Ayanda, as always, great to have you on First Post Africa. Thank you for your valued insights and analysis on all the latest.
Thank you.